One of your posts was, my prices are based on my talent, not your budget. How do you navigate setting your price with one, knowing like these are businesses that are starting, they don't have a lot of money, you know what I mean? Like in a lot of cases. Two, wanting to help people, like you said, you did for me. Cause like, we all get torn between like, I want to help.
Right.
And I want to live.
Right.
I want to help, but I want to live. So how do you help while living?
Starting out, I was doing logos for like $50. Where that post came from, it got to a point in my life or my career. I put a lot of time and effort into developing my craft. When I say that, my prices are based off of my talent, not your budget, it's because the work has been put in. I have over 18 plus, I'm saying now 20 years of designing experience. You're paying for quality. People will drop 200 easy for a pair of Jordans and will not blink twice because of the quality, because of the name, and they know what they're getting from it.
Yeah.
People will drop, $1,000 on an iPhone because it's an iPhone. People will pay for what they want and what they feel has value or have quality in it. I'm not at the, $100, $200, logo range anymore. I'm like, for some people, I've actually had to, kind of slide up, like, I'm sorry, but we start off.
Yeah.
We start off
yeah.
at a certain amount. And so it's just one of those things where, you let them know, up front, because people like your work and people like what you do. They will make accommodations. And so to your point where how I, help the businesses who are starting off, some of them understand that, there's a certain quality they're looking for. There's a certain level of professionalism that they want to portray. For me, logos are your way of talking to your customers without you in the room. They're the first thing people are going to see typically when they either go to a website, look for you on Google, and those are the things that people see first. And those first impressions are typically those lasting impressions. So, like I said, I base the prices off, it depends on the project, and it also depends on the intensity of what's going to requires. Some things, don't require, a lot of bandwidth in terms of mental bandwidth in terms of trying to figure out the design. Okay, if I have to do the extra work doing the research, because like I said, even with for example, logo designs, you start off with a brief. You start off with from there you go to research. You're getting an understanding of what does a client want, what are expectations of what they're looking for in the future for the logo. This logo, when I typically do logos, I don't do it for right now or a year from now. I'm trying to get you set up for 10 years and plus. Coca-Cola hadn't changed their logo in like 20 years, if not more. Yeah. So you think about it, logos are lasting. Good logos are lasting things. They don't just change every year or change with the trends.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to the pricing of it, it just really depends on how much research is going to go into it. How much back and forth are we going to need? How many revisions going to do for, this set project?
You mentioned research a lot. Mm-hmm. And I watched a video today on YouTube about a graphic designer. We'll get more into that later. Mm-hmm. But one of the things he mentioned was when people give him like the brief of like what they want, he does assumption-based designing. So mm-hmm. like he has a 48-hour turnaround time. Mm-hmm. He'll basically just make whatever you send him. And if you don't send him, if there's like questions, he just kind of fills in the gaps. Mm. And so I didn't realize like how much research may go into like making a logo. Cause I'm thinking like, okay, people just give you the information. Mm. But then I'm like, what if they don't give you enough info? What if they give you too much info? So what's that like? How many times, which is worse, and how often does each happen? I guess like, does one happen more than the other where it's like, okay, you have a lot of like, I got a lot to work with. It's too much, or I don't have enough to work with?
I'd rather have too much than not enough. Because when you have too much, you can then have a better idea and formulate, something. And then not enough, and like you're kind of like second guessing, okay, but is this what they mean? they need this, is they're trying to represent this, it's just a lot of questions you have to ask yourself, but you already, in the process of it, and you can't just go back and forth. Rather, if you have too much, now you answering your questions as you're reading along. Okay, do they need this? Oh, okay, I see it now. Okay, if they need it, okay, I see it now. So it is, I'd rather have something that's too much than not enough, because that way it kind of eliminates the back and forth.
Yeah.
And because sometimes you're trying to reach out to them, they can't get a hold of them. And then it's like, now you're stuck, you know, in the limbo. Like, okay.
Especially if you're like in a creative workflow.
Yes.
Like you got to get it done right then when your mind is got the juice.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, so like the research part of it comes with, you want to be innovative, but still have something that's, relative to the business and the target audience. So for example, I would say Apple's a good example, only because it's an Apple, but it has nothing to do with their phones. It has nothing to do with the computers, but it's just a brand that they established to where it's simple enough for someone to recognize and lasting enough somebody can, redraw if they need to. And that's another thing. I watch other, people on YouTube, podcasts and everything. And one of them stuck out to me. He said, if your logo is good enough for someone to recognize and recreate in 3 seconds after looking at it. So say you give them 3 seconds to look at it and then take it away. If it's recognizable, they should be able to give you some kind of, when they redraw it, they can give you some kind of idea of what it looks like.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, is a good logo, because, okay, because you think about it, you're driving past, you don't typically stare at a logo for, time on, like, for a long period of time. It's normally a catch of the eye. Ooh, that looks nice.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Driving, it's like,
especially,
it's gone.
Especially when you're driving. And this is one of those things where, is it appealable to the target audience who they're looking to appeal? And then if not, just not their target audience, but sometimes maybe a little bit outside of that, they're trying to bring other people into that. Is this, appealing to the brand, the field that they're in? So if I'm doing a tech field, I'm not going to have anything food related. It doesn't really make sense. So it doesn't make sense, what you're putting together.
Except Apple.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious. That's funny you say that. I was like, that is so true. But I think it was this one, when they did that, they wanted something to, I forget what because I was watching a documentary of how they came about. And like, let's start off, in the garage. It's just one of those things that they just put together. And I think it really was, Steve Jobs had an Apple, and it was like, they made it a joke about it at one point. It's like, we just call it Apple. And it was like, you know what? You onto something.
Yeah. Honestly, like, simplicity is valuable.
That is definitely the key thing, is simplicity. There's a lot of people and a lot of other designers out there that want, the flares, the gradients, the this, that, and the third. I think, how is it going to translate to different medias? So you're putting on, putting on a t-shirt, what, you can't do a flare on a t-shirt. I mean you can, but this doesn't really, if you're embroidering a flare, that's not going to happen.
Right.
As opposed to, if you're doing a graphic on a t-shirt, and there's different ways to implement certain things, on certain like on certain designs. So you're trying to put it on, especially if you're doing like a corporate style, or working with different styles of companies, different, like a Fortune 500 company doesn't need a flare. Certain things will kind of basically relate to your status of an individual, or your brand, your company.
Yeah.
And it just helps solidify, who you are, because you think about, you're not gonna put a Comic Sans font on a Fortune 500 company. This going like, okay, you a joke. What are you trying to portray? Like, it seems like you're just okay, but then you I'm sorry, you slap a sans serif font or makes I'm gonna check that back, a serif font with the basically the I don't know, the top and the bottoms kind of flare out a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a serif.
That's literally what was in my mind. I don't know how. Before you start talking, I was like, I think he means when it does a little at the bottom.
Yeah, so that's a serif font. And those, you slap those onto a thing, and it says, "Oh, okay." Like you established
on that same train of pricing, right? Because you talked about doing $50 logos in the beginning and then scaling up from there. How do you know? Like, how did you change? Like, how did you
leap of faith? I love my wife because she's the one who really got me out of my, $50 logo mindset. And what it does, it helps weed out the ones who are serious and who's not serious. If someone is serious and they really want something and they know the value of what that is, they're going to pay for it. You get anybody $50 logo, did that and then you $50 logo, and then you say unlimited revisions.
Yeah,
you a lie. You a lie. You going to unlimited revisions. I'm like, you gonna be on the same logo for months on end, just tweaking every little thing. I'm like, I'm telling you, that's my ride. That's my ride right there. She's not, I'm not gonna say ride or die because she's just my ride. She with me all the way to the end. So it is one of those things. She really had to help me understand, like, you're talented. You're selling yourself short. Up it, and it's every year she kind of like, okay, let's revise where we at now. Take it up another notch. Okay, and then it really helps though, because when you're doing it now, you are not only establishing your quality based off of your price point, but then also you're getting another level of quality clientele. You're not just, I don't want to say bottom feeding, but that's really what it is. When you $50 logos, you're like, okay, I'm just, anybody in a mama's getting like, oh, I want a thing.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking it. Everybody got to start somewhere, but you can't have the time. You're getting $50 logos and you're doing 10 of those. That's $500. Say I can do one project for maybe 600. Now that limits my time of constantly spreading myself so thin.
Yeah.
And constantly, oh man,
and the amount of people you have to deal with.
And the amount of people you have to deal with. I'm telling you, that drains you. That drains you. Constantly, that's like a mental drain. It's and so you have that one time, that one project you're focused on, instead of 10 of them you kind of spread over. And so, or say you're like, you got 10 of them in a week. You're like stressing, oh my God, I gotta get this one, gotta get this one. But now you have that one. Not only do you have that one, but it's more than the amount that you would have got if you had 10.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's kind of like, I forget who said it, but they had a good point. If you have multiple people coming in at that price point, your prices are too low. That means it's accessible to anybody.
Yeah. I mean, it's for the work that you're doing.
Yeah,
people see it and they're like, "Oh, hell, no brainer." It's like when you see something cheap, like, "Why is that so cheap?" I'm buying that one.
You definitely question, like, "Why is this cheap? Like, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it?" But it just helps me, especially the life I live. I mean, I don't have the time nowadays to do like 10, 12 projects. Especially, oh, I need 12, I need, do logo this, do t-shirt that, or a flyer this. So you scale up and you realize that you're making more, stressing less.
Once again, Party Wolf Podcast, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.